Well, hi, my name is Brian Janey, and I am the piano appraiser. I'm a registered piano technician with the Piano Technicians Guild, and I'm also affiliated with the American Society of Appraisers. On this channel, we talk about the do's and don'ts of piano care, tips on buying and selling pianos, as well as various scenarios regarding their appraisal. So if you like the content, if you'd like to follow on what it is that I go over in these videos, do think about subscribing, and clicking that like button would be super awesome. In this video, we're going to be talking about the business of donating a piano to a nonprofit for a non-cash charitable contribution. Now, this is a pretty neat thing that I have seen unfold in a number of scenarios where people have taken very lovely pianos and donated them to senior care facilities, to churches, to universities, to music societies, and other nonprofits that engage in the business of music making in one way or another. And one thing, number one, that you want to make sure that you are aware of when you think about donating a piano is identifying who it is that's actually going to be receiving it. Generally, you have to contact them, and usually they will send someone out to look at the piano to make sure that it's appropriate for their purposes, and then they will basically accept it. I have a lot of calls that people, inquiries, where people would like to donate their piano, but they haven't taken that first step. And it is important to make sure that you understand that before you can be a donor, you have to have a donee. So, step number one. Step number two is realize how much you can actually write off. You can write off, when it comes to a piano, up to $5,000 without actually concerning yourself with an appraisal. That doesn't mean that you just, don't do any paperwork or anything. You will need to make sure that you actually look up what it is you have as a piano and find various places in the market where the piano is available and file away various ads and other information that you find at the time of the donation with the letter that you will get from the donee that acknowledges the gift. That way, if there's ever an audit or something comes up, you have something to reference with the IRS that, yes, this was worth at least the $5,000. Okay, number three, realize that if your piano is worth more than $5,000, it will need a qualified appraisal, which is basically something that is stated in the IRS rules that you have to have someone that actually engages in or is active in the appraisal trade that is familiar with pianos. So you will have to have a qualified appraisal done. And that is something that you would submit with the IRS Form 8283 to your accountant when you file for your taxes. Realize that an appraisal project involving a piano is something that is pretty technical. It is comprehensive in many instances. It is a large research project, and it is not inexpensive. Okay, number four, you have to have a piano that has some significant value in order for it to make sense to proceed with the appraisal. Realize, of course, you can write off up to $5,000 on an IRS Form 8283 without appraisal, just your own research filed. But if it's worth more than $5,000, then you need a qualified appraisal. Well, the business of whether or not someone like myself going through what is a rather specialized and large process means that the piano should have some significant value. If, in my experience to date, if the piano does not come out with a fair market value of at least $20,000 or more, the appraisal process may not make sense. So for those that think that you can write off a piano just as some sort of business process to lower your taxes, you kind of might be missing the point that you're donating something because you want this particular organization to prosper, and the benefit of getting a tax write-off for it, it is sort of secondary, really. Okay, number 5. The appraisal cannot be dated more than 60 days prior to the date of the donation, which means you have to identify a donee. They have to be in receipt of the piano and before the appraisal process really honestly can begin. I cannot do an appraisal more than 60 days prior to the date of donation, because the date of donation is also the date that the piano is valued. So there is a little bit of a process there that has to be in play before appraisal really can begin, if you find yourself in a situation where, yeah, this piano is actually worth what would be necessary for this to make sense as a non-cash charitable contribution. Number 6, you have to have from the donee what is called a contemporaneous letter of acknowledgment. That is such a mouthful. But basically what that is a letter from the donee that says that they received the piano, and it has a description of the piano in some, random detail to make it obvious that that's what they've got. And it needs to have a statement on there that there was no goods or services exchanged in receipt for this gift. The IRS definitely wants to see a statement like that on this letter. Now realize a lot of times I get calls from the donee about a piano they received from a donor, and the donee finds themselves feeling like they should pay for the appraisal. And that's not how it works, because in order for that letter to be true, the donee can't pay for the appraisal. That's just not how that works, because then the donor basically is receiving something from the donee. So the donor is the one that has to pay for the appraisal. Number 7, and this is super important, I may relay in these videos, and even in this specific one, certain circumstances that I've encountered with people that were clients where they benefited greatly from doing donations like this. But you do actually need to talk to your tax preparer before you proceed to make sure that this actually makes sense based on your tax exposure and liability. Number 8 is the donee has to keep the personal property that was donated for at least 3 years. They can't just accept the gift or accept the piano and then turn around and sell it. That's something that you might want to make sure they understand in receiving the piano, that they have to keep it for 3 years, because if they don't, there's some tax gyrations that they have to go through in selling it if they're a nonprofit, and they have to actually reverse your gift in some ways, and there's like a whole other appraisal process. That's a big nightmare. You just don't want to do that. Just get some insurances from your donee that they're going to make sure they keep that piano for at least 3 years. And number 9, I may have mentioned this in passing earlier, but the actual organization that you're giving the piano to does have to have some sort of music making function. So you can't just give a piano to, some random organization that doesn't have music as a part of their charter, because the piano actually needs to be used. And number 10 is the organization that receives the piano. It needs to fit their purposes and goals in making music. A lot of times I find churches and other places that have received pianos that honestly they should not have taken. Because they were very old, they were terribly maintained or not maintained, they were exposed to extremes of humidity and temperature, and you want to make sure, and usually the donee will come look at the piano prior, but you don't want to give a super old piano to a nonprofit music school. You don't want to put yourself in a situation of basically giving them something akin to an old car that's been sitting in the garage with a tarp over it for 10 years, and now you're just going to donate it. It's not quite like that. Generally, these organizations are going to want pianos that are well cared for, that are reasonably used, that have been maintained, and are actually capable of being functional in the settings which that nonprofit intends to use it. So that's the 10 list, and I hope that wasn't horribly boring or otherwise confusing. If it is, please let me know. You can reach me on my website, thepianoappraiser.com, and we can have a conversation over the phone or in whatever setting, or if you yourself are in a position of wanting to donate a piano, please let me be of service and assist you through that process. This is Brian Janey, the Piano Appraiser, and thanks for watching. Thank you.